It is better to have your enemy see you pale than angry. Seneca, they tell you silence is golden. They tell you it's the refuge of the weak. They are wrong. Silence is a weapon meticulously crafted and ruthlessly deployed. It is the cloak worn by the predator, the mask of the strategist, the shield of the sovereign. We are not concerned with platitudes whispered in self-help seminars. We dissect the mechanisms of power. We expose the fault lines in human behavior. And we understand that silence, far from being an absence, is a potent presence, pregnant with intention and strategic calculation. It is the space where true power resides, gestates, and ultimately erupts. The world is a stage and every interaction a performance. Most play their roles with predictable transparency, their desires and anxieties plastered across their faces, their words tumbling out in a chaotic torrent. They are an open book, easily read and readily manipulated. But the silent observer, they hold the script. They dictate the terms of engagement. While others clamor for attention, expending their energy in a desperate bid for validation, the silent individual conserves their resources, gathering information, analyzing vulnerabilities, and plotting their next move with cold precision. Consider the courtroom. The accused, sweating under the harsh glare of the lights, nervously fidgets and rambles, attempting to explain, to justify, to plead their case. Each word, each gesture is scrutinized, dissected, and weaponized against them. Meanwhile, the prosecutor, a master of controlled silence, observes with unwavering intensity, allowing the defendant to incriminate themselves with their own panicked utterances. The silence of the prosecutor is not passivity. It is active aggression, a psychological pressure cooker that forces the truth to the surface. Silence forces the other party to fill the void. Humans abhor silence. It creates discomfort, uncertainty, and a desperate need for resolution. In a negotiation, the first one to speak after a prolonged silence is the first one to lose. They reveal their hand, betray their anxiety, and cede control of the narrative. The silent negotiator allows the other party to babble, to offer concessions, to reveal their bottom line, all in a futile attempt to break the tension. The silent individual absorbs this information, catalogs it, and uses it to their advantage, systematically dismantling their opponent's position with minimal effort. The capacity for calculated silence is not innate. It is a skill honed through discipline and self-mastery. It requires a detachment from the impulsive need to react, to defend, to justify. It demands the ability to observe without judgment, to analyze without emotion, and to act only when the moment is ripe. This is the essence of the Stoic ideal, the ability to control one's inner world in the face of external chaos. The silent individual is not merely quiet. They are centered, grounded, and impervious to the emotional storms that buffet those around them. The most powerful figures in history understood the strategic value of silence. Think of the Medici, whispering their commands from behind closed doors, their influence radiating outwards through a network of loyal agents. Think of the Roman senators, impassively observing the unfolding drama of political intrigue, their silence masking their ambition and their ruthlessness. Think of the chess master, contemplating the board, their silence amplifying the weight of their next move, forcing their opponent to second-guess every decision. Silence is the breeding ground for strategy. In the quiet solitude of contemplation, plans are forged, weaknesses are identified, and opportunities are seized. The constant noise and distraction of the modern world erode our ability to think critically and strategically. We are bombarded with information, opinions, and demands, leaving us little time to reflect, to analyze, and to plan. The cultivation of silence, therefore, is an act of rebellion, a reclaiming of our mental sovereignty. Do not mistake silence for weakness. It is the refuge of the strong, the sanctuary of the strategist, the breeding ground of power. Master the art of silence, and you will master the art of influence. Learn to observe, to analyze, to wait, and to strike with precision. The world belongs to those who understand the power of silence. They are the ones who shape its destiny. The capacity for silence separates the competent from the merely reactive. Consider the predator in the jungle patiently stalking its prey. It does not announce its intentions. It does not broadcast its movements. It remains still, watchful, concealed, until the opportune moment arrives. Its silence is not an absence of action, but a concentration of potential energy, a coiled spring ready to unleash its force with devastating effect. Similarly, in the human jungle of business, politics, and social interaction, silence is a strategic weapon, a tool for manipulation, and a shield against vulnerability. The individual who speaks incessantly, who feels compelled to fill every void with words, reveals their insecurities, exposes their weaknesses, and diminishes their power. They become predictable, transparent, and easily manipulated. Silence forces others to fill the void. This is its crucial psychological effect. In the absence of information, the human mind fabricates its own narrative. Uncertainty breeds anxiety, and anxiety leads to speculation. A carefully maintained silence can trigger a cascade of assumptions, projections, and fears in the minds of those around you. They begin to project their own desires, insecurities, and expectations onto you, allowing you to subtly manipulate their perceptions and direct their actions. By saying nothing, you become a blank canvas onto which others paint their own anxieties. They start arguing with themselves, battling imagined versions of your intent, expending energy and focus that you conserve. The ability to withhold information is a form of control. The less others know about your intentions, your strategies, and your vulnerabilities, the more power you wield over them. Information is currency, and silence is the vault in which it is stored. Guard your thoughts jealously, reveal your plans sparingly, and only when it serves your strategic interests. The impulse to overshare, to seek validation, to alleviate anxiety by confessing your hopes and fears is a weakness to be resisted. Those who talk too much are rarely taken seriously. Their words become devalued, their credibility diminished. They are seen as impulsive, unreliable, and lacking in self-control. True silence is not merely the absence of speech. It is a state of mental discipline. It requires the ability to control your thoughts, to manage your emotions, and to resist the urge to react impulsively. It is a cultivated skill, honed through practice and self-awareness. It is the foundation of all strategic thinking, the bedrock of inner strength, and the key to lasting influence. The individual who has mastered the art of silence is not easily provoked, manipulated, or intimidated. They possess a stillness, a composure, and a self-assurance that commands respect. Mastering silence requires introspection. It means understanding your own motivations, identifying your weaknesses, and recognizing the triggers that cause you to break your silence prematurely. Are you seeking approval? Are you afraid of conflict? Are you trying to impress others? Uncover the underlying psychological needs that drive your behavior, and you will gain greater control over your words and your actions. Learn to observe yourself as a detached observer, noticing the subtle cues that betray your inner state. The tightening of your jaw, the fidgeting of your hands, the slight tremor in your voice, these are all signals that you are losing control. The strategic use of silence extends beyond personal interactions. It is a vital tool in negotiation, in conflict resolution, and in public speaking. In negotiation, silence can be used to create pressure, to force your opponent to reveal their hand, and to gain a strategic advantage. A well-timed pause can disrupt their train of thought, unsettle their confidence, and compel them to make concessions they would not otherwise consider. In conflict resolution, silence can be a powerful way to de-escalate tensions, to create space for reflection, and to allow emotions to subside. By refusing to engage in heated arguments, you deny your opponent the satisfaction of a reaction, and you maintain control of the situation. Consider the courtroom. The most effective lawyers understand the power of silence. They know when to speak, when to remain silent, and how to use silence to create doubt, to expose contradictions, and to sway the jury. They allow the evidence to speak for itself, avoiding unnecessary theatrics and emotional appeals. Their silence amplifies the impact of their words, creating a sense of gravitas and authority. Similarly, in public speaking, the strategic use of silence can enhance your credibility, captivate your audience, and leave a lasting impression. A well-placed pause can create anticipation, emphasize a key point, and allow your message to resonate with your listeners. Cultivate a discerning ear for the unspoken. Watch the subtle shifts in body language, the flickering of eyes, the barely perceptible changes in facial expression. These nonverbal cues often reveal more than words ever could. Learn to interpret the silences between words, the pauses that reveal hesitation, doubt, or hidden agendas. By paying attention to what is not said, you can gain a deeper understanding of the underlying dynamics at play. This skill is invaluable in assessing the intentions of others, detecting deception, and navigating complex social situations. The world whispers its secrets to those who listen closely, and silence is the language in which those secrets are revealed. The pursuit of silence is not an embrace of passivity, but a commitment to strategic action. It is not about withdrawing from the world, but about engaging with it on your own terms. It is about cultivating inner strength, honing your mental acuity, and mastering the art of influence. Embrace the power of silence, and you will unlock a new level of control, clarity, and effectiveness in every aspect of your life. The most profound insights, the most brilliant strategies, and the most enduring legacies are born from the crucible of silence. It is the forge in which character is tempered and destiny is shaped. Learn to wield its power wisely, and the world will yield to your will. Consider the seasoned negotiator locked in a high-stakes deal. Millions hang in the balance. Every word is a calculated risk, every gesture scrutinized. But it is not the flurry of pronouncements and counteroffers that dictates the outcome. It is the pregnant silences that follow. The moment when a proposal hangs in the air, unanswered, unacknowledged. The negotiator, a master of controlled stillness, watches his opponent. A bead of sweat trickles down their temple. Their fingers drum nervously on the table. The silence stretches, a taut wire about to snap. In that silence, the true intent is revealed. The flicker of doubt, the barely suppressed eagerness, the calculation of risk. The negotiator uses this silence as a weapon. He does not fill the void with empty chatter or anxious justifications. He allows the discomfort to fester, the pressure to mount. He knows that in the desperate attempt to break the silence, his opponent will inevitably reveal their weakness, their bottom line, their hidden desires. And in that revelation, the deal is won. The victor understood that words are often shields, carefully constructed to conceal vulnerability. Silence, however, is a mirror. It reflects the truth, unfiltered and unadorned. Imagine a corporate boardroom where power struggles are waged with subtle gestures and carefully chosen words. A new initiative is proposed, one that promises to revolutionize the company's operations. The CEO, a veteran of countless battles, observes the reactions of his key executives. Some are quick to voice their support, eager to align themselves with the perceived leader. Others offer cautious praise, hedging their bets in case the initiative fails. But it is the silence of the dissenting voices that truly captures the CEO's attention. A senior vice president, known for his strategic acumen and unwavering loyalty, remains conspicuously silent. He offers no objections, but neither does he offer any endorsement. His face is impassive, his eyes betray nothing. The CEO knows that this silence is not born of ignorance or apathy. It is a deliberate act of defiance, a subtle challenge to his authority. The vice president believes that the initiative is flawed, perhaps even disastrous, but he is unwilling to openly confront the CEO. He prefers to bide his time, to gather allies, to undermine the initiative from within. The CEO understands the game being played. He recognizes the danger of underestimating the power of silence. He knows that he must uncover the vice president's true intentions before they can sabotage his plans. He initiates a series of private meetings, carefully probing for weaknesses, seeking to understand the motivations behind the silence. It becomes a game of psychological chess, each player trying to anticipate the other's moves. The CEO eventually learns that the vice president is not motivated by personal ambition or spite, but by a genuine concern for the company's well-being. He believes that the initiative is too risky, that it could jeopardize the company's long-term stability. Armed with this knowledge, the CEO can address the vice president's concerns directly, modifying the initiative to mitigate the risks. The silence is broken, not by confrontation, but by understanding. Envision a courtroom drama where a defendant stands accused of a heinous crime. The prosecution presents a mountain of evidence, seemingly irrefutable. Witnesses testify to the defendant's guilt, painting a picture of a cold-blooded killer. But the defendant remains silent. He does not deny the charges, nor does he offer any explanation. He simply sits there, impassive and unreadable. The jury is baffled by his silence. They struggle to understand his motives, to reconcile his apparent indifference with the gravity of the situation. Some see it as a sign of guilt, a tacit admission of culpability. Others see it as a sign of defiance, a refusal to participate in a corrupt system. But the silence is a deliberate strategy, carefully orchestrated by the defendant's lawyer. He knows that any attempt to defend his client would be futile, that the evidence against him is too overwhelming. Instead, he seeks to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. He wants them to question the motives of the witnesses, to scrutinize the evidence, to consider the possibility that the defendant is being framed. The silence becomes a shield, protecting the defendant from further incrimination. It forces the prosecution to prove its case beyond any reasonable doubt, a task that becomes increasingly difficult in the face of the defendant's unwavering silence. The jury is left to grapple with the ambiguity, to weigh the evidence against the silence, to make their own judgments about the defendant's guilt or innocence. And in that ambiguity, the defendant finds his only hope. The weak, however, misinterpret silence. They see it as weakness, an absence of strength or conviction. They believe that those who remain silent have nothing to say, nothing to offer, nothing to defend. This is a fatal error in judgment. The weak are quick to fill the void of silence with their own assumptions, their own projections, their own fears. They assume that silence equals ignorance, that it reflects a lack of intelligence or understanding. They mistake it for a sign of compliance, a willingness to accept whatever narrative is presented to them. They fail to recognize that silence can be a weapon, a tool of manipulation, a means of control. A man sits across the negotiating table, his eyes fixed on you, his expression unreadable. You present your proposal, outlining the benefits and the potential rewards. He listens intently but offers no immediate response. He does not agree, nor does he disagree. He simply remains silent, absorbing the information. The weak negotiator, eager to close the deal, will immediately begin to talk, to fill the silence with further explanations and justifications. He will offer concessions, lower his price, sweeten the pot, all in an attempt to elicit a response. He believes that by talking more, he can persuade his counterpart to agree. But the silent negotiator understands the power of restraint. He knows that the longer he remains silent, the more anxious his opponent will become. He knows that the weak will eventually reveal their true intentions, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. The silence forces the other party to negotiate against themselves, to offer more and more without receiving anything in return. It creates a sense of unease and uncertainty, making them desperate for closure. The weak man, uncomfortable with the ambiguity, will talk himself into a corner, revealing information he would have otherwise kept hidden. He will make promises he cannot keep, agree to terms he will later regret. The silent negotiator, on the other hand, retains control. He remains detached, objective, and in command of the situation. He allows the other party to make mistakes, to reveal their hand, to weaken their position. He then chooses the opportune moment to speak, to deliver the final blow, to secure the best possible outcome. Silence in this context becomes a form of psychological warfare. It is a test of wills, a battle of nerves, a contest of dominance. The one who can remain silent the longest, the one who can withstand the pressure and the uncertainty, will ultimately prevail. The ability to remain silent, to observe, to listen, is a crucial skill for anyone seeking power and influence. It allows you to gather information, to assess your opponent's strengths and weaknesses, to formulate a strategy. It prevents you from revealing your own intentions prematurely, from making rash decisions, from falling into traps. The weak are often impulsive, driven by emotion, prone to speaking before they think. They reveal their thoughts and feelings without considering the consequences. They are easily manipulated because they lack the self-control to remain silent, to conceal their true nature. The master strategist, on the other hand, cultivates the art of silence. He speaks only when necessary, choosing his words carefully, using them to maximum effect. He understands that silence is not merely the absence of speech, but a powerful form of communication in itself. It can convey authority, confidence, and control. It can create an aura of mystery and intrigue, making others want to know what you are thinking, what you are planning. The weak often fear silence. They equate it with boredom, loneliness, or rejection. They feel compelled to fill every moment with noise and chatter, to constantly seek external stimulation. They are uncomfortable with solitude, with introspection, with the quiet contemplation of their own thoughts. The strong, however, embrace silence. They use it as a tool for self-reflection, for problem-solving, for creative inspiration. They understand that the greatest insights often come in moments of stillness, when the mind is free from distractions. They are not afraid to be alone with their thoughts, to confront their fears and insecurities, to examine their own motivations. They find strength and solace in silence, using it to recharge their batteries, to renew their focus, to sharpen their minds. The courtroom scene unfolds. The defendant, still silent, sits as the prosecution builds its case. Each piece of evidence, each witness statement seems to tighten the noose. The lawyer for the defense, however, remains composed. He understands that the prosecution's case, while seemingly strong, is built on circumstantial evidence and questionable motives. He knows that the jury is watching, observing, judging not only the evidence but also the demeanor of the defendant. He has instructed his client to remain silent, to offer no explanation, to show no emotion. He understands that any attempt to defend him at this stage would only serve to strengthen the prosecution's case. The silence is a calculated risk, a gamble on the jury's ability to see through the facade of the prosecution's narrative. The weak jurors, those who are easily swayed by emotion and swayed by public opinion, will likely see the defendant's silence as a sign of guilt. They will assume that he has something to hide, that he is unwilling to face the consequences of his actions. The stronger jurors, however, those who are more independent-minded and more skeptical of authority, will be more likely to question the prosecution's motives. They will wonder why the defendant is remaining silent, what he is trying to achieve. They may even suspect that he is being framed, that he is the victim of a conspiracy. The silence creates a space for doubt, a space for interpretation, a space for the possibility of innocence. It forces the jury to confront their own biases, to examine their own assumptions, to make their own judgments. The trial is not just about the evidence presented, it is about the psychology of the jurors, their ability to think critically, to resist the pressure of conformity, to make a fair and impartial decision. The defendant's silence is a test of their character, a challenge to their integrity, a gamble on their humanity. The weak will condemn him without a second thought, while the strong will demand proof beyond a shadow of a doubt. The final verdict will depend on which group prevails. Silence, therefore, is not merely the absence of speech. It is a battleground for the minds of others. It is a test of their strength, their intelligence, their capacity for empathy. The weak are easily defeated by silence, while the strong can use it to their advantage. The Machiavellian strategist understands that silence is not simply a passive state, but rather a tool, a weapon, a form of deception. It is a way to control the narrative, to manipulate the perceptions of others, to conceal one's true intentions. In a world of constant noise and information overload, silence can be a powerful form of communication. It can create an aura of mystery, of power, of control. It can make others feel uncomfortable, uncertain, even afraid. The strategist uses silence to exploit these emotions, to gain an advantage over their opponents. Consider the example of a negotiation. One party makes a proposal, the other party remains silent. This silence can be unnerving. The proposer may start to second-guess themselves, to wonder if their offer was too high or too low. They may feel compelled to fill the silence, to offer concessions, to reveal their weaknesses. The silent party, meanwhile, gains valuable information. They can observe the proposer's reactions, gauge their level of anxiety, identify their points of vulnerability. Silence allows them to assess the situation without revealing their own hand. It creates an imbalance of power, a situation where one party has more information and control than the other. The Machiavellian strategist understands that information is power, and silence is a way to hoard information. They reveal only what they need to reveal, and they listen carefully to what others say, and more importantly, what they don't say. Silence can also be a form of psychological warfare. By refusing to engage, to respond, to acknowledge, the strategist can create a sense of frustration and helplessness in their opponent. They deny them the satisfaction of a reaction, the validation of a response. This can be particularly effective in dealing with enemies or rivals. By refusing to acknowledge their existence, to give them the attention they crave, the strategist can undermine their confidence, their morale, their power. They become irrelevant, insignificant, invisible. Silence is a way to erase them from the map. But silence is not without its risks. It can be misinterpreted, misunderstood, even perceived as weakness. In some situations, silence can be seen as a sign of guilt, of incompetence, of lack of confidence. The strategist must be careful to choose their moments wisely, to use silence strategically, to ensure that it serves their purposes. They must also be prepared to break their silence when necessary, to speak with force and conviction, to assert their authority. The key is to maintain control, to dictate the terms of the interaction, to use silence as a tool to achieve their desired outcome. A skilled poker player, for instance, understands the power of silence. They may sit motionless, expressionless for long periods of time, observing their opponents, analyzing their behavior, trying to detect any signs of weakness or deception. They reveal nothing about their own hand, their own strategy, their own emotions. They maintain a poker face, a mask of indifference, a wall of silence. This silence can be intimidating, unnerving, even paralyzing. It forces their opponents to make decisions without knowing what they are up against. It allows the poker player to control the flow of the game, to manipulate the perceptions of their opponents, to ultimately win the pot. The Machiavellian strategist is like a skilled poker player, always calculating, always observing, always controlling. They use silence as a weapon, as a shield, as a tool to achieve their goals. They understand that in a world of constant competition and conflict, silence can be their greatest advantage. They use it to conceal their intentions, to manipulate their opponents, to ultimately achieve victory. Silence is the art of the unseen hand, the unheard whisper, the power that moves in the shadows. It is the ultimate form of control. Consider the Roman Empire, a vast machine built on conquest, assimilation, and the ruthless pursuit of power. Its rise was not solely due to the strength of its legions or the brilliance of its engineering, but also to its mastery of strategic silence. Before the legions marched, before the catapults were readied, Rome often employed a calculated period of quietude. Envoys would be dispatched, offering treaties, alliances, promises of protection, all cloaked in the language of diplomacy and the implied threat of overwhelming force. But often, the most potent weapon was the silence that followed these overtures. A deliberate pause, a withholding of response, a period of observation that allowed doubt and uncertainty to fester within the targeted kingdom or city-state. This silence was not passive. It was an active form of psychological warfare. It forced the potential adversary to speculate on Rome's true intentions, to second-guess their own defenses, to succumb to internal divisions fueled by paranoia and suspicion. Was Rome genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence, or was this merely a prelude to invasion? The silence provided no answer, and in the absence of clear information, fear filled the void. Think of Carthage, Rome's great rival, repeatedly brought to its knees not only by military might, but also by the insidious effects of Rome's strategic silence. After each Punic War, Rome imposed harsh terms, extracted heavy tributes, and then waited. This silence was more agonizing than any open declaration of war. It allowed Carthage to rebuild, yes, but under the constant shadow of Roman scrutiny, the ever-present knowledge that any perceived violation of the treaty would be met with swift and merciless retribution. The silence amplified the burden of defeat, preventing any genuine recovery, any resurgence of Carthaginian spirit. It was a form of slow strangulation, a psychological siege that ultimately proved as devastating as any military campaign. The Roman senators, deliberating in hushed tones behind closed doors, understood the power of this calculated ambiguity. Their silence was a weapon, a tool of control, a means of shaping the perceptions and behaviors of their enemies. It was a testament to their understanding of human psychology, their ability to exploit fear and uncertainty to achieve their strategic objectives. Or consider the prelude to any major military offensive throughout history. The amassing of troops, the positioning of artillery, the movement of supplies, all conducted under a veil of secrecy, a deliberate suppression of information. The enemy is left to guess at the timing, the location, the scale of the impending attack. This silence breeds anxiety, disrupts planning, and weakens morale. The defending forces are forced to spread their resources thin, anticipating threats from multiple directions, vulnerable to misinformation and psychological manipulation. The attacking force, meanwhile, operates with the advantage of surprise, striking when and where the enemy least expects it. The D-Day landings, for example, were preceded by months of elaborate deception, a calculated campaign of misinformation and radio silence designed to mislead the German high command. The Germans, unsure of the true landing site, were forced to defend a vast coastline, diluting their forces and leaving them vulnerable to the Allied assault. The silence surrounding the Allied preparations was a crucial element in the success of the operation, contributing to the element of surprise and the eventual liberation of Europe. The same principle applies in the realm of espionage. Spies operate in the shadows, gathering intelligence, planting disinformation, and manipulating events from behind the scenes. Their success depends on their ability to remain undetected, to blend into the background, to maintain a low profile. Silence is their greatest ally, their most effective tool. A spy who talks too much, who draws attention to themselves, is a spy who is quickly caught and neutralized. The best spies are those who can move silently, observe keenly, and act decisively when the opportunity arises. They understand the power of silence to conceal their true intentions, to deceive their enemies, and to achieve their objectives without detection. The Cold War was a battle fought in the shadows, a war of espionage and counter-espionage, where silence was the most potent weapon. Agents from both sides infiltrated enemy territory, gathering secrets, spreading propaganda, and engaging in covert operations. The stakes were high and the consequences of failure were severe. In this environment, silence was not merely a virtue, it was a necessity. It was the key to survival, the key to success, the key to maintaining the balance of power. Even in smaller-scale conflicts, the principle holds true. Imagine a siege. The attacking army surrounds the city, cutting off its supplies and communication lines. They may launch occasional attacks, probing the defenses, testing the resolve of the defenders. But often the most effective weapon is the silence, the waiting, the slow, inexorable pressure that grinds down the morale of the besieged. Inside the city walls, food and water become scarce, disease spreads, and hope dwindles. The silence from the outside world amplifies the sense of isolation and despair. Rumors circulate, fueled by fear and uncertainty. Some advocates surrender while others urge resistance to the bitter end. The unity of the defenders begins to crumble under the weight of the silence, the relentless pressure of the siege. Eventually, the city falls, not necessarily to a direct assault, but to the psychological toll of the waiting, the slow erosion of morale, and the breakdown of social order. The silence of the besiegers becomes a weapon more potent than any battering ram. It speaks volumes, conveying a message of inevitability, of overwhelming power, of the futility of resistance. Therefore, understand that silence is rarely empty. It is a space pregnant with possibility, a canvas upon which others project their fears and assumptions. The strategic deployment of silence, whether on the scale of empires or in the context of personal interactions, is a testament to the power of controlled restraint, the art of manipulating perception, and the cold, calculated pursuit of desired outcomes. Silence hides intent. It is a mask worn by those who understand the power of withholding, a calculated void designed to amplify the anxieties of the observer. The human mind abhors a vacuum. Faced with silence, it rushes to fill the void with speculation, projecting its own hopes, fears, and insecurities onto the silent figure. This projection is the key. The silent actor becomes a blank screen, a mirror reflecting the inner turmoil of the other party. They can then subtly influence the narrative by offering carefully measured responses, guiding the other person towards predetermined conclusions. This is not mere deception. It is a form of psychological steering, a manipulation of perception that allows the silent strategist to control the flow of information and the emotional landscape of the interaction. Consider the negotiator who remains impassive during a heated exchange. While their opponent vents and postures, they remain a statue, observing, analyzing, and allowing the other party to exhaust themselves. This silence is not weakness. It is a demonstration of control, a refusal to be drawn into emotional reactivity. It forces the opponent to confront their own arguments, to question their assumptions, and ultimately to undermine their own position. The negotiator's silence becomes a pressure point, a constant reminder of their own composure and the other's lack thereof. The silence amplifies the opponent's anxieties, forcing them to reveal their true motivations and vulnerabilities. Think of the poker player who maintains a stone face, betraying no emotion regardless of the hand they hold. Their silence and controlled demeanor sow doubt in the minds of their opponents. They cannot read the player's intentions, cannot gauge the strength of their hand. This uncertainty breeds hesitation, causing them to make mistakes, to fold when they should have stayed in, or to call when they should have folded. The poker player's silence is a weapon, a tool for manipulating the perceptions and actions of their opponents. The silence of a predator stalking its prey serves a similar purpose. It creates an atmosphere of suspense, heightening the prey's awareness and amplifying its fear. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig becomes a potential threat, adding to the psychological pressure. The predator's silence is not passive. It is an active form of control, a way of manipulating the prey's emotional state and increasing its vulnerability. By remaining unseen and unheard, the predator dictates the terms of the encounter, turning the prey's own fear against it. Silence can also be a powerful tool for self-preservation. In dangerous situations, it allows for observation and assessment without attracting unwanted attention. By remaining silent, one can gather information, identify potential threats, and formulate a plan of action without alerting adversaries to their presence. This is the silence of the spy, the soldier in enemy territory, the survivor navigating a hostile environment. Silence becomes a shield, a cloak of invisibility that allows them to move undetected and to survive in the shadows. The absence of response can be particularly potent when used against those seeking validation or approval. The silent treatment, a form of emotional manipulation, denies the target the attention and recognition they crave, leaving them feeling isolated, insecure, and desperate for connection. This silence is not merely a lack of communication. It is a deliberate act of emotional withdrawal, designed to punish and control the other person. The target is left to wonder what they have done wrong, to obsess over the silent figure, and to seek ways to regain their favor. But silence is not always malicious. Sometimes it is a sign of deep contemplation, of a mind grappling with complex issues. The philosopher in their study, the artist staring at a blank canvas, the scientist pondering a difficult problem, all may retreat into silence in order to focus their thoughts and to gain clarity. This silence is not a void. It is a space of intense mental activity, a breeding ground for new ideas and insights. It is a deliberate withdrawal from the external world in order to explore the inner landscape of the mind. In relationships, silence can be a double-edged sword. While it can be used to manipulate and control, it can also be a sign of respect, of allowing the other person to speak their mind without interruption. It can create a space for intimacy, for deep listening and understanding. However, prolonged or unexplained silence can also be damaging, leading to misunderstandings, resentment, and ultimately, the breakdown of communication. The key is to be mindful of the context and to communicate the intention behind the silence, so that it is not misinterpreted as indifference or hostility. Ultimately, the power of silence lies in its ambiguity, its ability to be interpreted in multiple ways. It is a tool that can be used for good or for ill, depending on the intent and the skill of the person wielding it. Understanding the psychology of silence is essential for navigating the complexities of human interaction, for protecting oneself from manipulation, and for harnessing its potential to achieve desired outcomes. Learn to recognize the different forms of silence, to interpret its underlying message, and to use it strategically to your advantage. Only then can you truly master the art of communication and the power of influence. Silence is the canvas upon which the unspoken is painted, a realm where intent is veiled and power subtly exercised. It is a strategic reserve, a space to gather strength while your opponents expend their energy revealing themselves. Every word uttered is a reduction, a narrowing of possibilities. Silence, however, maintains infinite potential, a field of uncommitted energy that can be directed at the opportune moment. To truly understand silence is to comprehend the architecture of control, the dynamics of power that permeate every interaction. A person who speaks incessantly broadcasts their vulnerabilities, laying bare their anxieties and insecurities for any astute observer to dissect. The silent individual, conversely, remains an enigma, their intentions obscured, forcing others to project their own fears and desires onto the blank slate of their expression. This projection is the key to manipulation, for it allows you to subtly guide their perceptions and actions, steering them toward a predetermined outcome. Embrace silence as a shield against unwanted intrusion, a fortress protecting your inner world from the prying eyes of the curious and the malicious. It is a means of preserving your resources, of conserving your mental and emotional energy for endeavors that truly warrant your attention. Do not squander your words on trivial matters or engage in pointless chatter. Let each utterance be deliberate, calculated, a precisely aimed arrow striking its target with maximum impact. Cultivate a presence of quiet intensity, a sense of contained power that commands respect without the need for overt displays of dominance. Learn to listen more than you speak, to observe the subtle nuances of body language and tone, for these often betray the true intentions that words attempt to conceal. The skilled listener gathers information like a patient hunter, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Master the art of withholding, of refusing to be drawn into emotional dramas or petty squabbles. Let others expend their energy on these distractions, while you remain focused on your long-term goals. Silence can be a weapon of profound psychological impact, capable of unsettling even the most confident individuals. A prolonged absence of response can create a void, a space of uncertainty that breeds anxiety and self-doubt. Use this tactic judiciously to destabilize your opponents and disrupt their carefully laid plans. However, be mindful of the potential consequences. Excessive or unwarranted silence can be perceived as arrogance or indifference, alienating those whose support you may need. The key is to strike a balance, to use silence strategically and with purpose, always mindful of its potential impact on others. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a form of communication in itself, a potent tool for influencing perceptions, controlling emotions, and ultimately, achieving your desired outcomes. Silence is the crucible where strategy is forged. It is the space between thought and action, the pause that allows for reflection, for calculation, for the refinement of intent. In a world saturated with noise and distraction, the ability to cultivate inner silence is a rare and valuable asset. It is the foundation of self-mastery, the bedrock upon which clear thinking and decisive action are built. The constant barrage of information and stimuli can overwhelm the mind, leading to confusion, anxiety, and ultimately, poor decision-making. Silence provides a refuge from this chaos, a sanctuary where you can reconnect with your inner compass and regain a sense of clarity and purpose. It is a time to disconnect from the external world and to focus on the internal landscape of your thoughts and emotions. This introspection is essential for identifying your core values, your long-term goals, and the obstacles that stand in your way. By quieting the external noise, you can amplify the voice of your intuition, that inner guidance system that can lead you to the most advantageous path. The practice of silence is not merely about abstaining from speech. It is about cultivating a state of mental stillness, a quietude that allows you to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment. This detachment is crucial for breaking free from the grip of reactive behavior, for responding to situations with calm deliberation rather than impulsive emotion. The ability to remain silent in the face of provocation is a sign of inner strength and self-control. It demonstrates that you are not easily manipulated or swayed by the opinions of others. It allows you to maintain your composure, to assess the situation objectively, and to respond in a way that serves your best interests. Silence is also a powerful tool for building rapport and trust. By actively listening to others without interrupting or interjecting your own opinions, you demonstrate respect and create a space for open and honest communication. People are more likely to trust those who listen attentively and who do not rush to judgment. This trust can be invaluable in building relationships, negotiating deals, and influencing others. In the realm of negotiation, silence can be a particularly effective tactic. By remaining silent after making an offer, you put the onus on the other party to respond. This can create a sense of discomfort and pressure, leading them to make concessions they might not otherwise have considered. The key is to maintain a calm and confident demeanor, to avoid fidgeting or displaying any signs of anxiety. Your silence should convey a sense of unwavering conviction in your position. Ultimately, the mastery of silence is the mastery of self. It is the ability to control your impulses, to manage your emotions, and to direct your thoughts with intention and purpose. It is a skill that requires practice and discipline, but the rewards are immeasurable. The true Machiavellian understands that silence is not merely the absence of speech, but a potent instrument of deception. It is the art of concealing intentions, of masking true emotions, of creating an illusion of neutrality while subtly maneuvering others to your advantage. Silence can be a smokescreen, obscuring your true motives and allowing you to operate undetected. It is a means of gathering information without revealing your own hand, of observing your opponents and identifying their weaknesses before they are even aware of your presence. The skilled deceiver uses silence to lull their victims into a false sense of security, to make them believe that they are in control while their strings are being pulled from the shadows. A well-timed silence can be more effective than any lie, creating ambiguity and uncertainty, forcing others to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. These assumptions can then be exploited to manipulate their perceptions and actions. Silence can also be used to create doubt and suspicion, to sow discord among your enemies and weaken their alliances. By withholding information or selectively revealing certain details, you can create a climate of mistrust, making it difficult for them to coordinate their efforts against you. The master of deception understands that words are often used to conceal the truth, but silence can be even more effective. It is a blank canvas onto which others project their own fears and desires, allowing you to subtly shape their reality. However, the use of silence as a tool of deception must be approached with caution. Excessive or inappropriate silence can arouse suspicion and undermine your credibility. The key is to use it judiciously, in conjunction with other techniques of manipulation, to create a seamless and convincing illusion. Furthermore, the Machiavellian deceiver understands that silence is not always the best strategy. There are times when it is necessary to speak, to persuade, to inspire. The key is to know when to be silent and when to speak, to adapt your approach to the specific circumstances and the individuals involved. The ultimate goal is always to achieve your desired outcome, regardless of the means employed. Silence, in this context, is simply one tool among many, a weapon to be wielded with precision and cunning. It is a reflection of the Machiavellian's core belief that the ends justify the means, that any action is permissible if it leads to the attainment of power and influence. The ethical implications of such a philosophy are irrelevant. The only concern is effectiveness, the ability to manipulate and control others to achieve your goals. This is the essence of Machiavelli.